But usually, you usually see the picture up there.
Yeah, he normally comes out.
Yeah. No.
1 minute after.
Here it is.
So,
Got about 30 seconds, so yeah, as soon as that picture goes away, then we're live.
sounds good. Thanks, Mike. Almost got off to a false start there. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the Monday, January 10th, 2022 Eden Prairie Planning Commission meeting to order. Everybody rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. May be seated. All right, Commissioners, the first item on our agenda this evening is the approval of the agenda. Does anybody have any comments on tonight's agenda? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the agenda for January 10th, 2022 for the Planning Commission of Eden Prairie.
Thank you, Commissioner DeSantis. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Kirk. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Second item is the approval of the minutes from the Planning Commission meeting held Monday, December 13th, 2021. Does anybody have any comments about those meetings that were distributed?
Yes, I have a slight change here. On page 3, second paragraph, where it says Taylor asks what the frontage waiver gained the applicant, it should be Taylor asks what the frontage waiver would gain the applicant.
All right. Is that understood? Staff, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Commissioner Taylor? Anybody else have any other comments? All right. Would you like to make a motion on that to pass the minutes as amended?
Motion to accept the minutes from December 13th,
As amended?
as amended.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Have a
Second.
Second from Commissioner Meddy. Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right. We have one public hearing on the agenda this evening for Blue Stem North. The way we'll run our public hearing, we'll ask the applicant if they want to come up and make a presentation to us, and then we'll ask any audience members that may want to comment to come forward and ask any questions or have a statement, and then we'll ask staff for a staff report before our deliberation. So if there's someone from the applicant's party that wishes to come up, please give us your name and address. And
Good evening, Josh Brandsted, Josh Brandsted, 607 Washington Avenue North, Suite 100, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Mr. Chair, Commission, thank you very much for having us this evening. We're really excited to be here. We've been working on this project for about 10 months now with the help of the staff here at the city, and then also joined tonight with my colleagues from Eagle Ridge Partners, who are a partner on the project, and also the current landowner of the site, BKV Architects, who are designing the project, and then Westwood Engineers, who is a civil engineer for the site as well. As you can imagine, a project of this scale, its location, it comes with a variety of different complexities, so look forward to discussing a lot of those intricate details with you this evening. To give you a little bit of background of who I am and why I'm here, I'm with a group called Greco. We're a local Minneapolis-based Twin Cities developer. We only work here in the Twin Cities market. We've been around for about 20 years. I'm the managing partner and president of the group. We have about a 61-person team at Greco, and about 58 of those folks work on our property management side of our business. We manage all of our own self-developed assets here in the Twin Cities. We've had involvement with a little over 4,000 units here locally over the 20 years, and over the last 10 months have really, both us and the city and the various design groups have put in a tremendous amount of work on this site and going through a variety of different designs and redesigns. So really look forward to giving you a preview of that here this evening. So if we can, I would love to just throw up the PowerPoint. Thank you. I think I'm hitting the clicker, right? Oh, do I just hit the power button maybe? Okay, thanks. Appreciate it, Julie. We'll go ahead and go to slide 3 if we could, please. Thank you. Yeah, we'll go ahead and go to the next one. Thank you. So to give you a little bit of context to where the site is located within Eden Prairie proper, the designation of yellow is the site that we're talking about this evening. If we go to that next slide, as you'll see, we're really surrounded by a lot of light industrial uses right now. It's actually what it's zoned for. To the north of us, there is a community religious organization. And then to the west of us, we have 212 and 169. There are some residential homes off in the distance across 212. If you can take me to the next slide. So to give you a little bit more context, a little bit of a step back, one of the interesting things about this site is it is one of the light rail connected sites. It's the Golden Triangle Station that will be part of the Southwest Corridor. We'll go to the next one. Additionally, it has a lot of neat attributes in the fact that it's also connected to the regional bike paths and trail areas too. So virtually you can go anywhere within the Twin Cities directly from this site. As we look forward to the next one, this is the existing site as it sits today. I'm sure many of you have driven by it. It is a vacant site. It's approximately 15.28 acres. It's made up primarily of wetlands. Of the 15.28 acres, roughly 6 acres of that, plus or minus, is actually developable once you step back from the wetlands, the various conservation easements and declarations. So you're really developing roughly a little bit over a third of the site, or can develop a little bit over a third of the site. You may recall back in 2007, this site was previously approved and a project actually started for 125,000 square foot office building, 128,000 square foot office building, an accessory parking lot, and then there was also a stormwater pond that was to be located on the site as well. That project commenced in 2008. It shut down as part of the Great Recession. And since then, it's sat vacant. The work that they did start, you'll notice there's a bit of an outline there of a building pad. There were preliminary footings installed. There was a significant amount of soil corrections done at the site. And then there was some light utility work done at the site as well, bringing utilities into the actual site. So today the site remains vacant, and there's a couple of unique aspects of this site that have made it rather difficult to develop and really analyze, I think, over the years. And one of two of those features is the high water table here, and then the suspects soils that we get to work with. So what we're proposing is a 2-phase redevelopment, and what we really see this as is transitioning this vacant site into a thriving, environmentally sustainable site that has a lot of various features to it, connected to multiple forms of transportation, the connectivity to nature, community, the light rail, really just a full myriad of different connections. And what we see is becoming one of the premier living sites here in the Twin Cities once fully developed. On the next slide, you'll see what we have outlined for phase one. That would be the north portion. So as we talk through this evening, as we talk through phase one, phase two, the northern building will be phase one. It's a 237 units. And then the southern phase, or phase two, will be the southern building that primarily fronts Flying Cloud Drive. So as we go through, so here as well, we've included a phasing diagram to even make it a little bit easier to visualize. But what we're looking at as phase one is a 237 unit development. It has a variety of different unit types, everything from a studio alcove all the way up to a 3-bedroom. As proposed today, we are seeking assistance of tax increment financing. So 20% of the units would be affordable at 50% AMI for the term of the TIF district. And then we have another 5% as part of the inclusionary housing ordinance that would also remain affordable at 80% AMI into perpetuity. Phase two will be 188 units. So in totality, like I said, 425 units between the two phases. Again, same affordability applies. And I should just note that all of our affordable units will be evenly dispersed throughout the building. And on to our next one. Here's some visual context to the site from the light rail station. I think it gives it a really good overview of what it looks like coming down the rail line. Our building schematics and exterior skin facade was heavily influenced by the aspects of the wetlands and that turn and fall. That's how we came up with kind of this rustic goldish color as one of our design features. There's a variety of different heights within both buildings that transition from 6 stories down to 5 to 4 to 3 to 2 to 1. So it kind of gives it somewhat of a cascading effect. And we've incorporated a variety of different rhythmic bump outs throughout the project, along with the pretty substantial amount of glazing as well. So we'll go ahead and go through a couple more. There's more of a kind of a higher level view down towards from the wetlands view. And then we have the next slide will be an entrance view from the side. I wouldn't get too caught up in the yellowness of this. These renderings are a little hard to depict the actual colors, but we do have a material board here with us this evening too, so we can touch, feel, and really look at the up close colors. So again, just to kind of summarize, 425 units between 2 phases. 25% of the units will be affordable, 20 at 50 and 5 at 80. We've got roughly 576 structured enclosed stalls, and then we have a handful of surface stalls to get us to 593 stalls. We've got about 36,000 square feet of open space, so approaching nearly an acre. And within that, it's I think as you see this site, it's one of the really unique attributes of it is just the connectivity to outdoors and the nature, and we just think it's such a unique opportunity. As we go to the next slide, each project's accompanied with its own amenities package. They're extensive, projects of this size and scale, but we do feel like it accommodates a very active lifestyle. On the next slide, we have our sustainability features as well and different methods that we are working through right now. It's a long list, but I think it speaks volumes to this project and where it's at. So with that, Julie, if you could take us back to slide 14, that would be hard. I have Mike Critch here from BKV Architects. I'm going to have him come up and talk through a little bit on the exterior details and the architecture of the site.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Mike Critch with BKV Group. I'm president and a practicing architect there, and I appreciate being here in person. It's been a long time to be able to do this, so this is actually really great. So great to see you in person. Looking at slide 14, I just wanted to give a little more in-depth presentation on how we arrived at the design, and I'll try to be brief as well, but we looked at this as really it's a unique site on this very natural area of wetlands, but it's also surrounded by a highway, a frontage road, industrial buildings. And so it's really got this strong dichotomy of very natural surroundings and then a hard urban edge. And so with that, it makes this project, I think, very unique. And with this new transit-oriented development and the station being built, it has the opportunity to continue to make this area very unique. And so we embraced that idea of the wetlands and really embracing and allowing each of these buildings to face the wetlands, bring that natural terrain up into the buildings. We see this as a collection of buildings, creating a unique urban village connected to the transit, connected easily to the roadways network, as well as then connected to the natural environment. And so with the siting of these buildings, it's really, it appears really more as a collection of 3 buildings. There's and they're at different heights, as Josh was mentioning. We have a taller 6-story building on the south side, a 5-story building towards the transit station, and then it steps down at the north side to 4 stories. So that gives the whole design some variances in variation in height. The buildings have then this more urban street wall facing the main frontage roads, while then on the interior, as they face the wetlands, we create these courtyards and these projections and legs of the building that reach out to the wetlands. And as those reach out, they create these courtyards, and we create a very interactive, appealing connection to where most of the residents have some type of view and embracement of the wetlands themselves. So we think that's very exciting, related to how the building's been sited. If we go to slide 15, the next slide, please. This kind of shows that view from the frontage road along Flying Cloud, and it shows this variation of 4 stories and 6 stories, straighter urban edge along the front end drone, but they're pulled apart to actually allow that glimpse as you pull into the site, whether as a pedestrian or vehicular, that you're pulling into the site of this roundabout that connects both sets of buildings, and you have that view to the wetland right away. I think what's unique about this is that this entranceway and the area along the frontage road has opportunity, and in this rendering we're showing at the pedestrian level, the 1st story of the building, that there's opportunities for public art engagement, and that could come in a variety of different things. We're going to engage in that process, and so we don't know what that is yet, and I think that's where we want to invite the public and really figure out what the best type of thing is for this public art. But we're just representing something at the facade, but this could be mural, it could be sculptural and 3-dimensional. Again, we're not quite sure, but there's definitely opportunity for that. Again, this view showcases the materiality of the highlighted feature, which is the standing seam metal, which has a textured finish to it, which we think is very unique. Instead of a flat facade, it'll have shade and shadowing on the facade, and it'll shimmer and change in color and variety along the way. So we think it'll be really cool. Our inspiration from that is drawn from the wetlands and the reed grasses and the verticality of those grasses. And so pulling from that and drawing from that was part of our inspiration in the architecture. As you also look at this, the 4-story building is a little bit different than the 6-story building across it. We see these buildings as being siblings, in that the common material is the yellow ochre of the standing seam metal, and then where the features vary, then the 6-story on the right has a dark bronze color at that corner feature, while the phase 1 building has a light gray color. And so that's where there's alternating features to this. So they're similar and yet they're distinctively different from that perspective, but they go together. Can we go to slide 13, please? This will be the last one that I jump to. So when you see this now from the wetland side, and then this is our approach from the transit station approaching the various buildings, again, you'll see quite a variety, and the color scheme really transforms and is very different. The ends of these buildings is, on the 6-story building, it's a lot more of that darker material palette facing the wetlands, but it's a lot glassier facing the wetlands. The building to the right, it's a little hard to see in this rendering, but that dark bronze becomes the light gray, and so those two features really play off of each other. This rendering also depicts the ability to have great pedestrian access to the transit behind us and to the project. It shows this sculptural form and this terracing and variety within each of the building legs that come out, and even in the 1-story elements that are projecting out, the lattice work gives another texture at a different scale. And so, and then down to some of the sustainable features, the pervious paving that we're representing here is trying to be more sustainable and green and friendly towards the embracing this natural surrounding. So if we can go to the material slides, keep going forward, next right here. So this is just a representation of the inspiration that we had seen with this particular site in Eden Prairie. This whole area at one point was much more wetlands and lakes and things like that, and so this is kind of that last remaining area that's within this particular area, and so we really want to embrace the wetlands and what that is. And we see that it's an evolving, changing scene and natural surrounding through the seasons. And so that's where we draw from this color palette. And it's actually really pretty neutral with the dark colors and the two tan and gray colors. And then we have the accent feature color of the metal panel that is the yellow ochre. But they're all used in balance with each other to create variety, and yet that inspiration that you might pick up as things are turning from winter into spring, that landscape changes, going from summer into the fall with the fall colors. We think this pulls and draws from that, so having that rich, deep accent color along with a nice contrast of those 4 main colors, we think is really going to be rich and very nice. The only issue with this particular slide is that it's not quite as well represented as the material board, so we've brought that. Unfortunately, those who are maybe viewing online can't necessarily see the material board, so I apologize for that. But the board behind me really does represent, if you look at the materials, more of where the metal and the color of that, and the window colors and the accent features and the siding and all of that. So if you have any questions on that, please let me know. If we go to the next slide, this just shows phase 1, and again it shows the variety of the 5-story and 4-story, so creating the stepping of that, the sculpted forms of the roof lines, and that's also brought down into the amenities areas. It's hard to see in these flat elevations. And then that represents more the gray features, and so then this goes to phase 2 where the material colors reverse. So if you go to the last slide in this sequence, it's the reverse of what you see in phase 1, and so and yet they're very much siblings in that manner. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Josh if you want to wrap up here. So thank you very much.
Well, from there, I think if there are, I'm sure there are a lot, follow-up questions, and we can start talking through details as well.
Thank you, Mr. Branstad. Appreciate your presentation and your architect as well. Commissioners, any initial questions of the applicant at this point in time? Commissioner Meddy.
I have a few questions. I don't, is now the time, or do we want to have Julie's presentation before we get into?
Fire away.
Okay. Question for the developer. I'm just curious, between the two phases, is the plan for the amenities to be shared, or that, is one resident going to be able to use the other building, or are they going to both have their own kind of set of stuff?
Yeah, so each building's designed to have its own set of amenities. This is actually a similar process of a project that we just completed in Shoreview called Loden SV and Emmerich SV. So they're two projects just like this where we did the reversing color palette, incorporated a lot of this unique metal panel design, but each building has its own parking, amenities, staffing area, so they really stand alone on their own. They're just next to each other.
I don't know if this is a better question for you or the architect, but I'm not very good at reading, the topography of the site when I'm looking at drawings, so it kind of would be helpful just to have an explanation so I understand what the high water table, especially, and how the parking relates, what's happening from Flying Cloud Drive as we go into the site. Does it go up at all, then back down? It would help for me to kind of get a sense of what that feel is like.
Definitely. I'm going to probably bring up David Bade from Westwood. He'd be the best one to explain that.
Thanks, Josh. Thank you, Commissioners. To answer, if we could go back to, we don't have the site plan anymore. You have the site plan in front of you. You got to spin back to that. But yeah, basically Flying Cloud Drive is dropping as we're heading south. So there are multiple access points throughout the park to get to the parking. So for example, for Building 2, which is the southernmost building, Flying Cloud Drive, there's actually a new entrance which will be coming off of Flying Cloud Drive just about at grade with very little drop to the lower level of that parking. And as you're coming up into the main entrance, that'll come into the main parking area, and then there'll be another upper level parking access. Kind of similar on the north side as well, and then you have kind of the ups and downs basically of the main drag on the first building to get to the two different access points for the below grade parking. So the parking is separated within the building. There isn't a connection, there isn't essentially a speed ramp going between these. These aren't sloped floors, they are independent floors. And so we're basically kind of working with the topography to try to come in at the right elevation, come in at not too high elevation, and also be above the water table enough to make sure that we have minimum separation, which we do. So
generally speaking, again, would you describe the parking as above, on average, like half above grade or all above grade?
The lower level is probably 50 to 70%.
Okay.
Sort of exposed. Again, it depends on which building you're at. More of the northern building,
More the northern?
kind of going up, is going to be below grade.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you. That's just helpful for
Yep.
me. One other question, and this is for Mike, the architect. This color that we're talking about, I forget the name. Was it auburn or what you described it?
I use the term ochre.
Ochre. It sounds like ogre.
I think we've used about 3 different names.
Standing here looking at the material board, makes me think of a couple of buildings over on West End that have what seems to be similar. What I don't like about those is they sort of look like they're trying to be fake copper. And my question is, does this have a metallic kind of effect, or are you trying to stay away from that and have it be more of a flat color? I don't know if you know the buildings I'm talking about, but I've seen sort of these golden, similar color to that somewhat, that's almost like this coppery effect, but doesn't really look like copper.
The intent is not to have it look like copper at all. It will have a matte finish,
Okay.
so it's not meant to be reflective. We're using standing seams specifically to give it texture and shadow to create a really cool texture and variety that way, but it is meant to be much more of a natural earth tone type of, that's why I'm using the term ochre. It's the deep colors that you saw in those visioning images taken from those natural photos. That's the the color that we're looking for. I know the fake copper look, it's not meant to be that whatsoever.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Mike, while we're answering questions back and forth, if you wouldn't mind taking that board and maybe setting it in front of the podium right there so the commissioners can see that a little bit closer, we'd appreciate that.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. Other Commissioner DeSantis?
Yes. I have several questions. I'm not sure to whom to direct these questions, but my first is that based on the site plan, it looks like about 60% of the property is wetland or marsh. Is that correct?
Yeah, that would be correct.
Right. Has there been a study, a walkthrough of any unique species or ecosystems that might be compromised by a considerable reconstruction of the wetland configuration?
Yes, Commissioner, there has been. We've proceeded with an EAW review, and that process is still wrapping up. To date, we have not had any negative impacts to the ecosystems based on the intended design. There are rusty patch bumblebees that are present at the site, which we'll need to be cognizant of, but Westwood actually developed the study, and then the city, along with help from WSB, have been working through the public commenting component.
Second question I have is, what are the unique challenges in terms of borings and foundation footings for a site that's heavily marsh laden?
Yeah, well, it's support, right, for the building and how you put your foundation systems in. So the prior development actually did a good job with their soil corrections. They soil corrected roughly, I know I'm going to misquote this, almost 2/3 of the site of the buildable area. So the other third of the site will actually have to use a piling system to support the building.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions from commissioners? Commissioner Marcos?
Yeah, I just have a quick question on maybe you mentioned the timing of phase 1 to phase 2. How quickly after phase 1 do you guys plan to start phase 2?
You know, we're working through that internally because there's a discussion of given what we're seeing in the marketplace today with inflation, rising interest rates, rising construction prices, and shortage of labor, do we try to fast track phase 2 to have that come on earlier? Our preliminary idea was to do phase 1, and once we hit 80% leased on phase 2, we'd kick off, or on phase 1, we'd kick off phase 2. We're actually looking at seeing if we can't step that up a little sooner.
Okay.
Our current contemplated, I should just go over schedule in general, so thank you for the reminder, Commissioner. Our current contemplated construction start right now, given where precast times have slipped over the last 6-7 months, probably puts us at right around a July groundbreaking time frame. And then from there, it's about 18 to 19 months for the first phase. And then, as we currently have it contemplated, the second phase would start kind of at that 80% leased mark, which would probably be right around the 9-month mark from opening the first phase.
Commissioner.
Commissioner Taylor?
Yes, Josh, thank you for the information so far. You mentioned that you're looking to have single, double, triple bedroom residents there. Do you have any kind of ballpark of what the square footage is on per unit?
Yeah, absolutely. So our studios range from 485 square feet up to 560 square feet. Our one bedrooms start at right around 575 square feet and go all the way up to about 850, 900 square feet. Our two bedrooms will start right around 900 square feet and they'll go up to 1,250 square feet. And then our three bedrooms will start at 1,385 and go all the way up to 1,500 square feet.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question. There's very little surface parking, about 18 or so stalls I saw. Is additional visitor parking available underground, or is that security controlled for residents only to get into those underground?
So we can use some of our underground, actually, what would feel like the on-grade parking of level 1 that people can drive directly into. So that is how we've planned to accommodate visitor parking. Really, the exterior parking is primarily going to be for vendors and daytime visitors, and then overnight, there's a limited amount for overnight visitors, but really we have a way to section off that first level garage so that we can accommodate them. We've done that successfully in a couple other projects in the urban core where we have more of these dense transit-oriented developments where we need to accommodate both users.
That's good to hear. And it looks like on the Phase 1 building, you have plenty of kind of queuing space on that northerly driveway for visitors to kind of wander in and figure out what's going on before they can turn in there. The Phase 2 building turns right in off of Flying Cloud Drive, and I want to make sure it's easy for them to figure out that the general public's invited into that garage door so that they don't hold up traffic or anything, if they can get in freely on that Phase 2 building as well.
I think you're totally right, and you bring up a good point that was brought up in the traffic study of doing a one-way queuing system through the entrance of the building, or through that central entrance, which I think would probably help accommodate that by bringing people by the Phase 1 entrance first,
Yep.
which would give them a little more time to get orientated as they pull around the roundabout.
Okay. Great. Yeah, that helps a lot. Commissioner Gooding?
In reading some of the literature prior to the meeting, the electric vehicle support. It's a highly technically advanced building, and the EV support was really rather low. Couple spaces, if I'm reading it right.
Yep.
I was surprised at that.
Yeah.
You've got buku bicycle stations and parking for bikes and all that. I was surprised at the small amount dedicated to electrical vehicle charging, and including for guests.
Yep. Yeah, so that's a starting point. 2 is a starting point per building. We currently have 2 and 2 other 200 unit, or actually 3 200-unit buildings, one in the northwest suburban metro area, and then one in the 2 projects in Shoreview. What we're seeing from an actual use rate is not generating enough usage for us to work with our vendor to add more. Now, we do set up our systems in the parking stalls and where we locate them next to the electrical rooms, so that can be expanded from 2 to 5 to 10 rather easily.
Okay. I just thought, with it being next to a transit station versus not, you would tend to find people that would be more tilted that way, but
Yeah.
okay. Thank you for your answer.
Everybody good? Okay. One last question before we let you sit down. The landscape plan includes a variety of trees on top of the parking garage in one of the courtyards on the Phase 1 building. And I know they're smaller trees, crabs and cherries, I think they are. But I just want to make sure that those can be designed. You don't have a lot of floor-to-floor space there, so there'll probably some built-up planters or whatever, sized large enough to hold the root ball and keep them from freezing year over year.
Absolutely. Yeah,
got
we've
that
employed that method in a variety of different projects on those raised plaza areas. Yeah.
Great, great. Thank you. What a tremendous project.
Thank you.
So, thank you very much. Okay, this is a public hearing. Is there anybody else in the audience that is not with the applicant team who would like to get up at this time and ask any questions? Seeing none? Thank you. Julie, can you run us through the staff report, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, members of the commission, the applicant is before you this evening with several requests. They are requesting a guide plan change from TOD to Parks and Open Space on some of the property, and I'll talk about that in a little more detail later on. They are asking for PUD concept review and PUD district review with waivers, a zoning change from office to TODR, and office to Park and Open Space, as well as site plan and preliminary plat approval as part of the overall package. The applicant has done a very thorough job of explaining the project overall, so I'm going to focus a little bit more in my comments on some of the process. So with regard to the comp plan and the zoning, as the applicant mentioned, this property had previously received approval for a project, I believe it was called Liberty Plaza, that proposed an office building and associated parking. So the existing zoning on this site is office. With the 2040 comp plan update, the city re-guided this property to TOD, and of course, not knowing exactly how that TOD project would exactly lay out, the entire property is guided for TOD. As it turns out, a majority of the property is wet and does not support development. So as a part of that, staff is requesting that the outlot areas that would be deeded to the city as part of the project be guided and zoned park and open spaces. You'll recall we just recently went through the effort of creating a park and open space zoning district to address properties such as these. So that kind of gives you some of the context on the rezoning changes. With regard to the PUD waivers that are requested, the TODR zoning district does contemplate the use of commercial on the ground floor. As you can imagine, in a traditional idealist TOD development, that TOD development is very near the transit station, so you've got a lot of pedestrian traffic. You look for a mix of uses. The way this site lays out, with it being somewhat distant from the actual station itself, the applicant is requesting a waiver, and staff does support that waiver to not have the ground floor commercial uses. We see those ground floor commercial uses being much more likely on the properties that are immediately adjacent to the TOD or to the Golden Triangle Station area rather than on this property. So as a result of that, the applicant is not only requesting a waiver to not provide the commercial ground floor uses, but also a waiver from the ground floor transparency, because of course that goes hand in hand with creating kind of that window shopping pedestrian type of atmosphere, and that doesn't necessarily fit the bill on this particular site. They're also seeking a building setback waiver. The TODR district requires a maximum front yard setback of 20 feet. Again, that's trying to get those buildings right up next to the street. That doesn't necessarily apply in a site that is so rich with natural resources and not carrying that same type of pedestrian environment. And they are also asking for several structure setbacks for wetlands. The wetland portion of the code does provide for setback requirements from wetland. Staff is supportive of the various setback waivers that are requested as a part of that. And then also the Class 1 materials on the ground floor. So the applicant spoke very eloquently to the parking underground parking and how some of that is coming up out of the ground. Of course, those Class 1 materials, as we've talked in several other projects, are really intended to, again, to create that pedestrian atmosphere, have those higher quality materials at the ground level where they might get a little more wear and tear from deliveries and other things happening on site. But in this case, where we've got underground parking coming up out of the ground, again, it doesn't quite mesh with what the spirit and intent of the code is, so a waiver is logical from staff's perspective in this case. With regard to parking and building materials and architecture, the site does meet those requirements, as well as addressing many of the sustainable features that have been outlined in the city's design guidelines. So staff is recommending approval of the project subject to the conditions outlined in your staff report, and I'd be happy to answer any other questions that you might have.
Great, thank you, Julie, appreciate that. Commissioners, do you have any questions of staff? Commissioner, Maddie? Yep, go ahead.
Are all the, just generally speaking, is most of that area around that transit also guided in the comp plan as TOD?
So you'll see in one of the attachments that came out in your packet, let me back up. So when the city did the Aspire plan, rather than taking a broad brush approach at guiding many properties for TOD, we took a more minimalist approach and identified those properties that were probably more ripe for redevelopment. So I think in this area at Golden Triangle Station, it's this property as well as the Tags property, if my memory serves me correctly, that are guided for TOD. But the comp plan in its text does go into great detail and talk about the principles of TOD and talks about the fact that properties beyond those that are guided in the plan are expected to come in and ask for re-guiding, assuming that the development plans meet those TOD principles.
Thank you. Yeah, I see the diagram now. That's helpful to understand. Just I guess a side note, I think it'll be kind of interesting to see down the road. You think you understanding what our TOD guidelines state. I think we're going to have a lot of exceptions at this stop because it's just very different from, it's not in the middle of. I think any retail here, I'd be surprised to see even down the road. But so anyway, yeah, I think that's appropriate. Just a clarification on the class 1 materials. So the burnished block, is that the material we're talking about? That's not a class 1.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, that's correct.
Okay. I do like the applicant's proposed design for that, though, with what you're doing with the pattern of the blocking. I think that will look nice. So, thank you.
Julie?
Mr. Chair, if I could add one other comment I neglected to
Certainly.
in my initial presentation. So the applicant did touch a little bit on it. So public art is something that we have talked about as part of the TOD. We've seen that in other commercial or TOD developments in the city. So we have talked with the developer about several surfaces, whether that's the retaining wall that faces the LRT station, whether it's some of that exposed parking garage that comes up out of the ground. There are several canvases, if you will, that staff has talked with them about the potential for public art on the site. So we would anticipate the development agreement includes language that talks about a cost not to exceed for that public art, and that the public art selection would be handled with a committee that consists of planning or city staff, not just planning, city staff, as well as the developer and outreach to the community in some shape or form. Usually that is handled by our art staff, and they are a part of that process as well. So that is language that I would anticipate being included in the development agreement, but I wanted to bring that to your attention as well.
Thank you. That was going to be one of my exact questions, so you jump. Any other questions of staff? I have one more for you, Julie. You were talking about that front yard setback along Flying Cloud Drive, and if this had been a project where it would have been maybe more within that dream vision you were talking about, and we did have street level retail there, would we have reconfigured the public sidewalk from its close proximity to the street curb up to the face of building for that pedestrian engagement to the building face?
Well, you've got a lot of hypotheticals in that,
I do.
that scenario.
I do. And it doesn't apply to this project.
And it doesn't apply to this project. But I would agree that ideally, if you had a site that would support those types of uses, you'd want to get that sidewalk and that pedestrian traffic as close to that building as possible. But again, looking at specific site conditions and specific proposals, I don't want to box us into a corner. But generally speaking, that is a correct statement.
Okay, all right. Thank you, appreciate that. Other questions of staff? I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing if anybody so chooses, so we can deliberate.
So move to close the public hearing?
Thank you, Commissioner Kirk. Second?
I'll second it.
Second by Commissioner Gooding. I appreciate that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Okay, public hearing is closed. Commissioners, what are your thoughts on the project?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to kick it off a little bit,
Please do, Commissioner Kirk.
because I like this project. And the reason is, we did a lot of thinking with the TOD zoning and all, and we knew that we had some concepts and some good ideas about what we wanted to see there, but we also knew we had to be flexible. And I think this project fits into both of those categories of it's consistent with, I think, what the city's envisionment of what transit-oriented development would be, and some of the advantages of having the green line come into Eden Prairie. And yet, I think the waivers are reasonable, as staff has indicated, to allow enough flexibility within the zoning regulations to have this project, to meet the needs of the project as they've proposed it. Secondly, there's been a lot of discussion, at least it's been strong in my mind recently, about density and how Eden Prairie is increasing in density. And the population's growing. There are more people who want to move to Eden Prairie. It's going to get more dense. And as we've said before, we need to put that in the right place. I think this is a right place for the density of this this project. Another important city goal is affordable housing. Yes, the city requires it. The proponent here and the development is welcoming that and supporting our need for the affordable housing. So I just think this is a pretty good project, and I'm supportive of it. I think we've had some good questions that brought out a lot of details about it. But I'd be interested in hearing other commissioners' opinions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate it. Yes, Commissioner Higgins.
I have one that's off the point of most of what all has been on the discussion so far, just because of the size and the variety of housing opportunities that this project represents. And that is thinking about the fact that there will be families in various, sizes and numbers and so forth in that area within a relatively short period of time in comparison to what's been there all these years. Nothing. Except industrial and other types of business type activities, or just the wetland area to protect. And so my question is basically, and I don't expect we really have any thoughts with respect to this action this evening, but it occurs to me that driving through there several times now, I realize how different that is than some of the transit-oriented development we were considering. And we have to get our minds around the fact that, yeah, we got a big city here and there are a lot of places where things can happen. But the fact is, I have no idea myself personally where any of the schools are in any area, anywhere near that area. And it seems to me when you're trying to attract a variety of people to form a new area and live together as a new neighborhood and have that orientation that you're discussing and valuing, it seems like we need to have something at some point, not now, but when we're approaching that process where this becomes more of a realization to folks in Eden Prairie and elsewhere, that there's something different in that part of the community now than we've ever had. They are going to want to know something about how they would access those other features that are in the near vicinity, or at least they're going to be in that area, and also the school district itself. And again, this is far and away not part of what we're talking about, but it just did strike me as an area as I drove through it, and I thought, there's nothing like this anywhere near here. And you're the first. So I just thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Commissioner Higgins. And just as a tangent on that then, the apartment complex due south of this, a block or so that got put up some maybe 12, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
I would hope that our school system provides bus service past there.
Oh, I'm sure that but I'm thinking ahead to it is better than waiting for it to come together and
Sure.
then say, guess what?
Sure. Good. Thank you. Commissioner DeSantis?
I would also like to weigh in and tell you I feel very favorable about this project. It's a very thoughtful concept, and I like the aesthetics as at least they're presented on the board and in your schematics. And also, I was very impressed with the excellent palette of sustainable features, particularly with the provision that you could add solar to the rooftops of these units. This is a very forward-looking urban project, shoehorned in, yes, but close to mass transit. To me, it is a brilliant execution and utilization of what was dead space. And so kudos to you. And it is a positive move toward affordability. Thank you.
Commissioner Taylor?
Yes, I too am excited about this project. The affordability housing aspect of it, and one coming to Eden Prairie, has a good taste and spin to that. The other thing I wanted to just call out is with the amount of additional traffic and the in and out of the garage accesses that's going to be on site, and keeping in mind the increased pedestrians that's going to be walking up and down the sidewalks, take in consideration some type of safety mechanisms, whether it's mirrors or silent sounds. I know we don't want to disturb the residents, but keep in mind that aspect of, whether you have to put bumpers or speed bumps coming in and out so folks just don't come zooming out and not recognize the pedestrians that could be walking by. If you haven't thought about that, keep that in mind from a safety aspect for the pedestrians and the residents. But good project.
Commissioner Marcos?
I'll just add, I agree with everything you guys have said so far. I think it's a very thoughtful project. I think we've seen some projects come in the last year or two where there's a lot of compromises that we're going, yeah, it's okay, you don't need as much parking, and yeah, we'll compromise because we think this is good for our community. But this kind of ticks all the boxes in that we don't have to do a lot of that compromising, and yet you're also going to give a really nice place for people to live. I would be excited about living in this kind of community, especially with the environment and the amenities and just the diversity that I think it'll bring. And so I'm for the project as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Manny, do you have closing thoughts?
I'll keep it short. Again, I agree with everyone's comments. I think the developer did a great job and architect on the design. I think the waivers all are very appropriate, and I also am very excited to see kind of the idea of this public art installation, and also just the fact that it sort of helps solve that kind of corner from being sort of this just big heavy block, and doing something really cool there, I think would be a great way to sort of highlight the entrance to this project.
Thank you. Commissioner Gooding?
I'm supportive of the project. One of the things I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around, though, is, at 6 o'clock at night when the businesses over there close down, that's going to be a really isolated spot. And, it is a well-designed, well-laid-out project, and I just, it's going to be on an island on its own, and for a long time. So I question that, but it's a well-designed, well-thought-out, and I'll support it, but wow.
Okay, thank you. If you build it, they will come.
That's it. Maybe they'll get another one built over there, take out some of the warehouses. Who knows down the road? But
Good.
It's going to be pretty isolated at 6 o'clock at night.
Great. Well, I think this is an outstanding project as well. I agree with all the waiver requests, and I appreciate staff running through all those points of findings on those waivers. I do like the design a lot as well. The color palette, I like everything, including the ochre. And I think that settles into the landscape very well. So wish you all the good success with that. I could anticipate a motion coming from someone on the floor about the project.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Kirk.
move to recommend approval for a guide plan change from TOD to open space on 11.17 acres. Plan unit development concept review on 15.28 acres. Plan unit development district review with waivers on 15.28 acres. Zoning change from OFC to TOD-R on 5.79 acres, and from OFC to P/OS on 11.17 acres. Site plan review on 15.28 acres, and a preliminary plat of 2 lots and 2 outlots on 16.96 acres based on plan stamp dated January 4th, 2022, and the staff report dated January 6th, 2022.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Kirk. Do I have a second by anybody?
I will second Commissioner Kirk's motion.
Thank you, Commissioner DeSantis. We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes unanimously. Congratulations on your project. Good luck with it. A lot of success to you. Appreciate it.
I liked it.
Very nice, very nice. Julie, do we have a planner's report tonight?
No, sir.
All right, members, any comments on a member's report from any one of you? All right, seeing none, I think we might be available for adjournment if someone would like to make that motion.
I move to adjourn the Planning Commission meeting January 10th, 2022.
I'll second that motion.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Planning Commission has ended. Thank you very much. Good evening.
Well done, Ed.
Yep.